Well, hello all. Once again, I apologize for the noise of the AC. I'll turn it down in a moment here. My car says it's 111 degrees out, and I am inclined to believe it because it feels about right. Yeah, anyhow. So, once again, it is Tuesday. It's about 5:15. Got a pretty decent day today, you know? It wasn't bad. So that's good. Anyhow, I don't even know what I want to talk about today. I had some great plan earlier about, you know what I'm going to blog about today is this, but now I can't remember what it is. So, I'm going to have to improvise here. You're going to have to go with me. When that happens, and it's like, I had this really great idea. Then I went to work for a couple more hours in it, and you can actually feel your brain cells jumping ship, you know? There, sorry about that. You know when you're doing like that tedious, monotonous, repetitive, bullshit, boring, meaningless, pointless, degrading labor that you have to do to earn a living, and you can actually feel your brain cells jumping ship. No, I remember what I wanted to talk about actually, and it was this. Writing. Writing is what I wanted to talk about. Because writing's always been my kind of first passion, and yet I have not actually made the time to sit down and do it in several months now. At my old job, I was working for this pizza place where I wasn't getting a lot of hours, and I was on call a lot, and on call sucked because I had to be available for like this 4-hour period during the day, but I couldn't go anywhere or do anything, because like I had to be available. I wasn't getting paid, but I had to be available to come in on like 10 minutes notice. But what it did do was it provided me with a really nice excuse to just sit down and write for a really long time. Spend a couple hours just writing, and wow, and NSX just went by. That's kind of awesome. If I had the money, I would so buy one of those right now, because as soon as the new ones come out, yeah. Anyway, so it was really nice because I could just sit and write for a couple hours pretty much every day. It was like, well, I can't really do anything. I can't go, like hang out at the library or go get coffee or go just, I have to be ready to go to work at a moment's notice. And so, yeah, it sucked, but it also meant I got to just kind of hang out and write. Now I'm getting all the hours I could possibly want, and I just don't have time to write anymore, and I really kind of miss it. And I think, obviously it's one of those things where you just have to find the time, you just have to commit to it, you just have to be like, okay. The other thing is, I kind of get to this point where it's like, I feel like, well, yeah, whatever, I write a lot, but if it never gets published, who the hell cares? And I wasn't really doing anything as far as publishing goes because, and I have, like in the past, there have been times when I send query letters out to agents or whatever, or I've submitted magazines to short stories, and I just feel like the competition is so stiff and everybody wants to get something published. And so I really feel like anymore online is the way to go, and I know every idiot wants to publish online, but I mean, that's kind of the point. Like, every idiot can publish online, and in a way that's a good thing, because some of those idiots really do, are doing good stuff, and some of them are really doing horrible stuff. So you got to kind of sift through the stuff that's like, yeah, such and such person doesn't know what he's doing, until you get to the stuff, like, oh, such and such person does know what he's doing. I'm probably in the former camp, but there it is. And that's the thing I really need to work on, because it's a thing I've wanted to do for a really long time and just haven't really done it. And here it is, 2016. And I've just never... there have been times when I sort of started to get into it and then stopped, and that's just no good. I got to keep going. I'm not good at the I don't know what you call it, the gumption, the persistence. That's it. That's probably a better word. It's not anything I've persisted at, and so there came a point when just sitting there writing just felt pointless. But I don't know. I've got to get back into it, and especially because I've been working on some things that I've kind of let sit for a while, and I don't think it's good sometimes it can be good to walk away from stuff for like a month, just kind of give it and then come back to it with a fresh perspective. That kind of can have some value, because you look back at it and it's like, oh, this is really dumb and doesn't work, or oh, you know what I could do with this is this other thing that I hadn't thought about. A fresh perspective can definitely help you out a lot. But I've been letting them sit for far too long, and I need to just kind of get back to it. I just get so damned exhausted every day. It's such a hard thing, to come home from work and like actually try to do something productive. It really is. And obviously it's a thing I need to expand some more time and energy on, because I have a number of novels I've been working on for a while now. One in particular, I'm not going to get into too much detail here, but one in particular that I need to do something with, and I need to find some kind of forum where I can either publish it as a serial or just publish the whole damn thing and be done with it. Say, here it is. Although, actually, I wonder if DeviantArt, maybe, I don't know. That's something to think about. But I also have a bunch of short stories that I've been playing around with basically since, forever. I've got some that go all the way back to 2005, that I've just been kind of dinking around with and haven't really found a forum to publish them in, and that's just no bueno. I've got to find a way to do that. And I don't know. I think it's a lot of work. When you start talking about getting something published, there's a lot of like sifting through stuff. There's a lot of like sifting through different online forums and different magazines and finding the right match for your work. And I don't think it isn't hard. It's just a tremendous amount of work. And I have found some really good stuff online. There's some really good stuff out there. But it's a tremendous amount of sort of tedious work of kind of sorting through websites and going through, and there are other websites that kind of organize all these things like Duotrope and Writers Market and Publishers Marketplace and all, websites like that, and those are really useful. But again, it's that tedium of like sorting through and finding the appropriate forum and trying to get your stuff published, and it's really kind of challenging. It's really kind of difficult. Or at least the actual doing of it is, the actual like finding the time to just sit down and do it, especially when, because it's the kind of thing you could commit to, like, okay, if you didn't have to work much, you could say, all right, well, I'll just commit to like doing 2 hours a day every day of this stuff. And when you do have to work all the time, it's a little bit harder. So, yeah. It's a thing I'm going to have to do. There's always, starting these vlogs was kind of a step. And it was a step that was hard for me to take in a lot of ways, but it was a good step for me to take. And I just have to take a few others, Back when I was a kid, I thought, God, wouldn't it be wonderful, and I suppose everybody thinks this, but to be able to make a living as a writer, to be able to just, write novels and short stories and make your living that way. And it really would be a wonderful, wonderful thing. It's hard to get there. It's, people do it, obviously, and I think, again, now it's easier than ever to get published. It's harder than ever to make any money at it. And they say that, the print books are dying, and there's probably some truth to that. God, that's the thing. All these things I'm interested in. I think I was talking about arcades the other day, and I used to work in an arcade. And, boy, you could burn through a lot of money fast in one of those places, couldn't you? But it was just such a fun place to go to, like, hang out with other people who were kind of into the same things you were, and you know, you could play head-to-head with your friends, and man, it was a lot of fun. And they were money makers back in the day. I mean, if you owned an arcade, man, you were doing pretty well. But I remember the arcade I worked in, we had this big, it was Cruising USA, and we actually had like the car that was like on gyros and kind of move around and stuff, and it was so wonderful. It was just so much fun. I remember that all of the games in the arcade were for sale if anybody ever wanted to buy them, and that particular game, the Cruising USA with the whole car and everything, was $11,000 if anybody wanted it. Try to imagine that, $11,000 for a single game. But and boy, you know, kids come in there like there were these mall rats that kind of hang out. The mall that I worked at no longer exists either. God, have you been to a shopping mall anymore? It's depressing as hell. But you know, arcades, it's a dying thing. I mean, there's still like nickel arcades and stuff, but it's just a dying thing, and it's something I sort of gravely miss from my childhood. It's just having that place you could go and just have fun. You know, it's just an entertaining, fun thing to do. I remember I spent $80 in an arcade one night, which is maybe a little, you know, overdoing it, but and that's the thing, you really could do that, and in some ways it's probably a blessing that they're not around anymore, but I just loved it, you know. And, you know, shopping malls, I mean, that's the thing. I went to the new City Creek Mall downtown a couple of years ago just to check it out. I'd never been there, and you know, it's mostly clothing stores. That's mostly what's there. It's really pretty depressing. It's like, yeah, okay, whatever. So if I want to buy clothes, that's where I'll go. But what you can't find is all the stuff. I mean, there used to be arcades and little novelty shops and comic book shops and video stores and music stores. You know, just all kinds of things. Of course, you know, big food court. So on the one hand, you know, maybe it's a blessing because you can't just go to some place and spend all your money in one place really quickly like you used to be able to. But I don't know. Man, something's missing from our culture. You know, it's so bland now. You go in there and it's just so bland. And anyway, getting back to like what all this was about, and I was talking kind of initially about writing and printed word and how it's kind of going the way of the dinosaur. It is an interesting point, and I read this somewhere. I can't confirm this because I can't remember where the hell I read this, but somebody made the point there are more libraries in America today than at any point in history. Like, there's actually more libraries now than there ever have been. And I still enjoy going to the library and browsing through books. And not to say, you know, there aren't some online things that are pretty cool, like Project Gutenberg and stuff like that. And I still don't have a Kindle. I got to join everybody in the 21st century and get a Kindle. But I never saw the need. I just always have printed books, and I love having printed books. I love the feel of a book in my hand. I love the smell. I love the smell of a book that's, you know, kind of been around the block a couple times. It kind of has that like dusty, mothball-y smell to it. You know, I love the look of words on pages. You know, just words on paper. I don't know what it is. It's just a wonderful thing, and it is going away. I mean, it's not a thing. Everything's moving online now, and that's just where things are going. That's just where the world's headed. It may be that in the next couple of generations, the whole concept of a print book is you know, everybody's kind of like, oh, what's that? Oh, yeah, I guess you did have to do something before computers, huh? You know, but the whole concept will just kind of go away. And I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, I guess on the one hand, it's just like, well, that's where things are headed, and it's just kind of the way it has to be. On the other hand, I'm like, you know, I'm not looking forward to that day. I like print books. I grew up around books. I grew up having books in the house. I think I've mentioned this before. I was lucky enough, we had a set of encyclopedias in the house. That was a thing that, you know, a lot of kids didn't have when I was younger because they were really expensive. And I suppose that's maybe the upshot of all this, is that information is now available very, very cheaply, and it didn't used to be. Because like you had to have that stuff in the house, which meant somebody had to pay for it, or you had to go to a library to get it. And now, you don't have to do that now. Information is just kind of right there at your fingertips, and it is amazing what's available online. What you can see, what you can look up. And so I guess if you're going to be a writer, you really do have to embrace that point of view. You kind of have to think, online is kind of where it's at. And there are even online publishers that are, I don't know how they work exactly, because, but it's just as in the old days, if you wanted to self-publish, you could pay a vanity press some exorbitant amount of money to print up a bunch of books for you. Or you could go to a publisher, and if they liked your work, they could publish you. Well, apparently there are people that do something like that online, and they'll kind of help you promote your work and stuff, just like a regular print publisher would. And it's a fascinating thing to me because I'm not quite sure how that works. I mean, you think of online publishing and you just think of people, joining online forums and doing Amazon and that kind of stuff, and that's obviously where the bulk of it is. It's certainly that's certainly what I've kind of been thinking about, because I just don't know any other way to do it. There's probably a better way to do it, but for my part, I wouldn't know how to do it. So that, as they say, is that. Yeah, it's an interesting thing to be a writer and to see a lot of that stuff kind of going away, to see a market like that's just completely saturated. I mean, both online and off. The market for books is just completely saturated. I mean, there's a book on every subject. There's a book on every. I really wish I had known that guy was turning into the driveway and not turning left here, but oh well. That's one problem with SUVs, even little ones. You can't see around the damn things. Oh well. I should just shut up and get an SUV, except I don't really want one. Anywho. So, online is where it's at, and it's still very, I mean, it's not in its infancy anymore, but it's still kind of hard to know like, how do you do this and get noticed? You know what I mean? How do you do this and create an audience? It's hard enough to do that in the print world. How do you do it in the online world? I don't know. And I think that's a thing I'm going to struggle with for a while before I get it right, because that's just a really tough thing. It's a really hard thing to get right. Dear God, I hate rush hour. We're going to be at this light for the rest of my life. Oh well. That's what I ought to write about. I had to write about rush hour traffic. I actually did kind of write a short story like that once. I've written all kinds of just crazy random things, and I like to think some of them are good. Most of them probably are not. But I don't know. It's amazing how much I used to want it and how sort of hopeless I started to feel about it after a while, and I'm not quite sure what made me start feeling like that. I'm not sure when that happened. But I got to a point where I just felt like it felt like this just ongoing exercise in futility, and I thought, I don't know if I really want to do this anymore. And certainly things like, having jobs that demanded an enormous amount of time and energy, and then beating my head against school for years and years and years, trying to figure out some way of using school in some productive way, and turns out there were a lot better ways I could have done that, but I'll spare you that conversation. Lord knows we've had that conversation before. But yeah, I just got to a point where I kind of felt hopeless, and I think that's the worst thing. I think that's your worst enemy, is any kind of author, or, well, any kind of artist. You don't want to get to a point where you feel like this is pointless and it's not going anywhere. Because the minute you start to feel like that, I think that kind of thing can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So you have to try and stay upbeat, stay positive, stay hopeful, I guess. And that's what I'm going to try to do. And it's hard. It's hard to, come home and do that stuff. Anyhow, that's it for me. I'm going to get some dinner and get home, and that'll be it. Anyhow, I will see you guys tomorrow.